Fox News contributor Sara Carter is back with us. Okay, Sara, so this is an issue that you've been following very closely over the past year, and that's the humanitarian crisis that's been unfolding on our southern border, which has been one of Biden's worst policy failures of 2021. By March, Customs and Border Patrol had already encountered roughly 172,000 migrants at the border, the highest number in years. That number kept ballooning month over month, and in total, Border Patrol saw more than 1.7 million encounters in fiscal year 2021. That's the highest ever on record. We saw President Biden appoint Kamala Harris as a quasi-border czar to deal with the root causes of the immigration crisis that they brought about with their own messaging.
I would, in fact, make sure that we immediately surge to the border.
She took a trip to Central America and accomplished absolutely nothing. Then she went down to the border in El Paso, Texas, more than 700 miles away from where the real crisis was occurring, and again, accomplished nothing. Then about a month ago, a federal judge ordered the Biden administration to reinstate Trump's Remain in Mexico policy because things had gotten so bad. You might think that's a step in the right direction, but never underestimate Joe Biden's ability to screw things up. They're now asking the Supreme Court to rule on the issue in an effort to end the Remain in Mexico policy once and for all. You know, Sara, you've been following this maybe closer than anyone. You know, what do you expect for this new year?
I'm actually very concerned. I was in Guatemala. I interviewed President Yamate of Guatemala while Vice President Kamala Harris was there. It was a complete failure. Her trip fell apart completely, and the president of Guatemala made that very clear. I spent the last year, you know, Lisa, on the border, actually in Del Rio, in the Rio Grande Valley, in Arizona, and I saw the surge. I got to tell you this. We keep saying it's a Biden policy failure. It's a failure for the American people, for our national security. It's a humanitarian crisis and a failure for those being trafficked across the border. But I actually believe, based on what President Biden and his administration is doing, this is what they want. This is actually part of their policy. Their policy is to just open the floodgates and allow people to come in. I've spoken with immigration and customs enforcement officers. I've been talking to Border Patrol agents. I've talked to law enforcement officials along the border, and they're stunned. They can't do their jobs, whether that's Title 42, the Remain in Mexico, which they say they're not even implementing now because they're not even being allowed. They can't even make these arrests. They're just releasing people into the United States in droves. And let's talk about COVID. There's no policy there. They're allowing people into the country. If they're so concerned about all the Americans that have COVID or spreading COVID or want to create all these mandates, they have a wide open border. It's like a COVID surge there, if that's what they're saying. And they're not testing except when necessary. So we have an issue here that is, frankly, I think at the highest level of national security. And it's really, really concerning. And so for the next year, I think it's going to get far worse, particularly if they get their way.
Well, and to that point, I mean, we had Tom Homan, the former acting director of ICE. He recently said this.
Border Patrol's encountered people from 150 different countries. 150 different countries. So the whole world knows our border's open. The whole world knows that they can get to our border, they can get into the United States. And many of these countries, you know, either support or are sponsors of terrorism. That should scare people.
It should scare people.
You had mentioned
Lisa,
yeah, talk about that.
Yeah, Tom Homan's 100% correct. We've seen people come across the border. This is based on information that Border Patrol has released from Yemen that has been connected and possibly connected to terror organizations. There was a gentleman from Saudi Arabia possibly connected to terror organizations. And I want you to think about all the people that have not been apprehended, all the people that are gotaways. And that's very important for the American people to understand. The apprehensions are usually the people that the traffickers want the Border Patrol to take into custody. Those are the people they surge through, the young, undocumented children, the family units. But what about the people they're trying to sneak in while they're pushing people in one direction. They're sending narcotics. They're sending people that don't want to be apprehended. Those are people with criminal records, or possibly people with terror ties, or possibly people on the Interpol database list. These are issues that the Biden administration just does not want to answer, which is why they clam up every time they're asked a question. I know Peter Doocy's held them accountable many times at White House press conferences, and they refuse to answer these questions because they know what I am saying, what the Border Patrol agents are saying, what the ICE officers are saying is 100% correct, and they don't have an answer for it. And I'm really afraid that if something happens, it could be a catastrophe for our national security and for the American people.
And just to get perspective, I mean, look at this Yuma sector border encounters. You look at October, November of 2020, 1,777, and then October, November of 2021, 44,512. Yet somehow the Biden administration is trying to say there's nothing to see here. You know, real quick, like 15 seconds before we've got to go.
Well, the numbers are the facts. Facts don't have feelings. We know what's happening at the border, and we've got to see there's still thousands more getting ready to head here from Mexico and from Central America and from more than 150 countries across the globe.
Right. Sara Carter, thanks for joining us.